It's Patrick Beatty Reviews, the #1 for news. It's Patrick Beatty Reviews, #1 for news. Yeah. Tune in, get up. Yeah, what's up?
Keep the change, you filthy animal.
All right, so welcome to the Iron Man panel, the film that kicked off the MCU. I am your moderator, KB, and I am joined by this lovely group of Iron Man experts. I would like you guys to introduce yourself. We'll start with Colin.
Yeah, I'm Colin. I'm with Stolen Droids. We're a geek news site and podcast. We have our podcast network, so check us out on stolendroids.com. And I'm also a big tech guru, so love me some Tony.
I'm Patrick Beatty from Patrick Beatty Reviews. I'm a film critic and videographer and just a super geek, so I'm really happy to be here.
I love the shades, by the way.
They're fantastic.
I love your hat.
Rich Bonaducci, film critic for Fox 13.
Hi, I'm Val, and I worked for the Walt Disney Company for 8 years. I worked there when and I say we because I feel like I'm still family. When we bought Marvel, when we bought Star Wars, like I worked there and I got to go home and tell my kid, guess what we did today? We did some big things. So I have kind of a different perspective on like the marketing and the branding around this film. I'm also on the air with 98.7 in the morning. I have a podcast called Movies That Make Us and a company called MarvelNewsOnline.com.
My name is Christian Lambert. I'm here promoting a cause to save comic books. So superheroes are an all-time popularity in pop culture, but nobody reads comic books anymore. So I had the idea, what if I create an online social media comic book company, and I created a company called Sideswipe Comics. And you're basically just in your social media feed, you come across this comic, you read it in 10 panels at a time, and then you move on. And you don't have to feel like you gotta go to the comic store, you don't gotta spend a lot of money. It's right there in your social media feed. It's called Sideswipe Comics, and it's at Sideswipe Comics on Instagram and Facebook.
And I'm KB, film critic, podcaster, TV critic, writer. I write for Shadow and Act, Decider.com, a lot of other different publications, all around black girl nerd, so to speak. So I love everything about this film. It was extraordinary and it kicked everything off. And to be quite frank, I think that it did more than any of us could have even imagined, maybe even greater than what Kevin Feige originally planned, and definitely Robert Downey Jr. For this part of his career. So let's kick it off. So why do you guys love this first film? Like what are some of your favorite scenes? Kind of who are your favorite characters, maybe even outside of Tony, that you really appreciate from this first film that really kicked off the MCU?
Yeah, I think as far as characters go, Pepper is amazing.
Yes.
She's just this total kind of badass woman that just really just takes charge and tries to help Tony keep his life that's kind of in shambles just in line, and so it's really fun to see that dynamic.
Iron Man is not only just for kickstarting the biggest cinematic universe ever made, but they were able to basically start something out of organic, just improv. The whole movie, the script wasn't even completed by the time they had started filming everything. So there's a lot of, what are we doing? Let's improvise, and that's where a lot of the comedy came from. So I would say one of my favorite parts about it is just how ingenious it was with them, just kind of going off the cuff with things. Like the things with Pepper and with Robert Downey Jr., most of the comedy in that was just them going back and forth, and nothing actually from the script. Most of the script is just the technical mumbo jumbo that you hear at the beginning and stuff like that. But Rhodey, for the small part that turns out was in the Rhodey one, is great, and yeah.
Rhodey Prime. I love a lot of things about the movie. One of the things doesn't really have to do with the movie itself so much as the idea behind it. I read Iron Man as a kid. I knew he was a C-lister, and when I heard that they were making one, I was like, oh, cool, me and my 3 friends will like it. And it ends up being this thing that everyone liked for some reason, probably because of Robert Downey Jr. and how likable he was and all that. But And that really set the tone for them trying to get people who were really good for the part, even if they had a career that was maybe fumbling like Downey's at the time, or they were kind of new people like Hemsworth and Hiddleston, that kind of stuff. I mean, it was great. But one of the things I really loved about the movie itself was the development of the suit. I mean, not just the first one, the big clunky iron one, which was great too, but all this time that they took to show you, hey, he didn't just fall into a vat of something and he's Iron Man, or get bitten by an iron spider. And, you know, he had to make this and trial and error and all that. And I loved how much time they took. It wasn't just a training montage for a minute in Rocky or whatever. They showed you how we built the first one, and they showed you how we built the second one, and even how he improved upon that, etc. Love that.
I loved some of the similar things. I don't know if my microphone. I'm really loud. Oh, there we go. Now I'm really, really loud. I love similar things. So what I love about this film and working for Disney at the time is like you said, Iron Man is a C-list comic book character. It wasn't the first one that we always thought of. We all had heard the song. We've all, you know, even people that aren't into comics kind of knew, but it wasn't, you know, wasn't a Superman character. And so what Disney did and what Marvel did is they took a chance on both this character and Robert Downey Jr. because at the time he was also a C-list actor. He had totally ruined his career, but he needed to do something. So they said, you know what? We want to try and make a superhero universe, and we're going to throw this little pebble called Iron Man out there, and we're going to see if anybody catches on. And if they don't, I mean, it's okay because he wasn't the biggest thing that we have to bring to the table, because they had ideas of the Marvel Cinematic Universe written down, I think, on a napkin somewhere. It wasn't anything like super technical, right? But they went ahead and they gave it everything. And when we saw that, I don't know if you guys feel the same, but when you went to the theater and you saw Iron Man and you heard the soundtrack is one of my most favorite things about the film, and you are sitting in that theater and here comes the music and here comes cocky little Robert Downey Jr. and you love him, and immediately we're like, this is something new. This is something we've never seen. I want to know what else there is. And I think that Robert Downey Jr. and Tony Stark, they're so relatable as just like, I feel like they were meant to be together. You know? I don't know. Did I break my mic? I have no idea. Maybe it's like one of those old Motorola phones.
Oh, yeah,
and you just hold it like that the whole time. I mean, I've done that, like the whole part of like 2002. So I'm good at it. Does anybody feel the same way? Like you went into the movie and you were like, we weren't really sure that this is amazing.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like honestly with the film, I know for a fact, because I was living in Atlanta at the time, and they had done a bunch of early screenings. I think that's how little faith they might have had in this, like, really taking off.
They were really crossing their fingers. They were all sitting in the back,
like, I hope someone likes this.
This is dangerous.
Like, oh gosh. Yeah, they were really kind of like,
get up and walk around, and sit on that guy's lap over there.
Oh gosh.
Just send it to me, I'll ask you first. Don't worry.
Val's gonna go rogue with this microphone.
She's about to call that karaoke.
Yeah, she's gonna go rogue with this microphone.
I don't karaoke unless there's tequila, so we're fine.
That'll be for later on. But yes, so I definitely feel like they had done all of these early screenings, and so my friends and I went to an early screening, and they're like huge. I went with 3 of my best guy friends, and they're huge Marvel Comics fans, and so all of us were sitting there like, this could be bad, but oh well, we're seeing it for free. And as soon as, I mean, literally as soon as Robert Downey Jr. got on screen, I was like, damn it, he is Tony Stark. Oops, sorry. I was like, he is Tony Stark, 1000%. It was fantastic. I mean, I feel like the film had everything: comedy, a little hint of romance with him and Pepper, action. But I do appreciate what Rich said. Like, you got to see how his brain worked. Like, that for me was the best part, because you're like, wow, Tony's a genius. And so, like, a little bit in the beginning, you know, they're like, he's a playboy, but also you're like, no, he's actually brilliant. And the fact that he created this from nothing is like the most insane part of the film, I feel like.
I love the acting. I was shocked that they get a Jeff Bridges in that movie. You get Paltrow in that movie. And then the scene with, and there's been great movies, up to that point there had been great actors in comic movies before, but they'd never been given a chance to breathe. And that scene where she's stealing the data off of Tony's computer and Obadiah walks in, and he's like, I know what you're into, getting into, and he that menace that only Jeff Bridges can bring. You're like, that was like a real cinema movie moment. That wasn't just a superhero movie moment. That was like real film.
Yeah, he's a terrifying villain, actually. Like when you think about it, and you think about it, he's fantastic. Like Jeff Bridges is fantastic as Obadiah.
Who expected anybody to have Jeff Bridges shake their head for the main villain of this film? Jon Favreau didn't even expect him to, but when he looked into the comics and was thinking, Obadiah Stane, here's this guy that took Tony's dad, or tried to take Tony's dad's company. I should probably go bald, because that's just as evil. That's probably what an evil guy would do. I don't know. And Favreau went with it, and man, it's one of the coolest.
Although I gotta tell you, the thing that bummed me out about it was I felt like Marvel in that first movie did what Sony did, which I didn't like. They killed their main character, their main villain in the movie. We lost Green Goblin in the first one, and then we lost Doc Ock in the second, and we lost Venom in the third. And then we get Marvel, and Obadiah Stane is really cool. And we lose.
Where would you see him come
Right.
back? I could see like Age of Ultron probably. Like,
Sure,
part of that.
absolutely. Yeah, but then again, if we didn't have him, we wouldn't have Sam Rockwell dancing in the second. We gotta have Sam.
Sam Rockwell was going to be Tony Stark. I don't know if people knew this, but he was, if the studio was not going to go for Robert Downey Jr., which there was a very likely chance if they were going to say no to this, and it was all down to Favreau and Feige to really pitch it, it was that Tom Cruise was in the running, Nicolas Cage was once in the running. Yeah, Nicolas Cage was kind of.
Oh, did I say that? I said you.
Yeah.
No, I mean I could never
Happy
see Nicolas
Dempsey
Cage.
was one of the possible candidates, and
You have a question?
Yeah, and Patrick and Rich kind of alluded to this, but I loved Terrence Howard's rendition of Rhodey, and Don Cheadle's great, love Don Cheadle, but I've never been able to get over that transition. I thought Terrence Howard was such a good Rhodey. What are you guys? I mean, I recognize behind the scenes there were reasons, but what do you guys think?
You guys want to kick it off? Because I thought he did a fantastic job.
I like them both, and it did take me, and I'll probably get booed for this because every time I say it, I get booed. I didn't like Iron Man 2, but I liked, as we got more into the Avengers movies, especially the last two Avengers, I think Don Cheadle carried things in parts of the character that I don't think Terrence Howard could have. And so I was a little bit like bugged by it, but I think that Don Cheadle really held his own as he went through that.
Although he should have died in Civil War. Died!
Well, like 7 people should have died.
I mean, lots of people should have died in Civil War.
It's the moments
Captain
that
America.
built between Terrence Howard and Robert Downey Jr.'s character in Iron Man that really like what you're saying, when it switches to Don Cheadle, it's like, okay, just like the movie, get over it, let's move on. But at the same time, they don't have as many scenes together that are really like, Iron Man, you're something more, you can do something special. They don't have that as much going on in the MCU, you just have to kind of like take that from Terrence Howard. So I see what you mean by that.
One of the other reasons that I really love Iron Man, and I think that it really hit at a good time, is that they brought to the table a character, and Iron Man is one of my favorite superheroes, besides Spider-Man, and you have a man that has been doing so many things wrong because he just hasn't been paying attention to his life. Like, he's a playboy, he's kind of a dick, let's be honest, and he's super smart and he just does whatever he wants. And then he gets brought into a real life situation and he figures out, I can do better. And then he decides to do better. And I think during the time that movie came out, that was something that we needed to see, is that we needed somebody to say, I'm human, I made these mistakes, I'm going to do better, and I'm going to look badass doing that in these costumes.
You said dick earlier.
I know. I already cursed, so I think
Welcome.
tough track.
But I just, like, did anybody not, walk out of that theater thinking, I relate to this guy? Like, everybody's like, as a woman, how do you relate to him? I relate to him because I'm a little bit cocky, and I want that costume, and sometimes I feel like the smartest person in the room. Like, that's, but also I've done some really crappy things that I want to make up for, and so, like, he was at the time, like, everyone's superhero. I feel like we all took something from that. And again, I'm going to say it again, the soundtrack's my favorite.
So before we get to your question, I just want to ask the rest of you, because that has been one of my questions. You know, what type of growth have you seen in Tony Stark from beginning to end? Because we all know, rest in peace, Tony Stark. He is no longer with us. So, you know, like, what type of growth? Okay, spoiler alert. Tony is dead.
I've not seen Endgame. Jeez.
Oh my goodness, I'm so sorry, Jay. Listen, your fave guy.
Jay Washington.
So, you know, he's no longer with us. But what type of character growth has you seen? Because that's a really good point. I mean, Tony kind of, it usually takes superheroes a while to kind of learn that lesson and get it right. But Tony went to Afghanistan once, was traumatized, essentially, and then immediately got his stuff together. I see I'm doing better. So he immediately got his stuff together. So yeah, tell me about the growth that you guys loved, you know, of Tony Stark's character.
Yeah, and I think a huge part of it was in Iron Man 3 with Harley. And that whole interaction and him like trying to settle with this little kid, but also forming this bond, and he's starting to realize all these different changes, and in those moments he's having all these panic attacks and trying to really cope with himself, and this little kid is in some ways helping him through this whole line of progress, and it was just really cool to be able to see how, you know, just this little kid, he makes such a huge impact on someone's life.
And that little kid is not in Endgame. By the way.
Spoiler alert.
He knows how to make all of that stuff, but he still doesn't know how to make him a sandwich. Like, what's the problem with knowing how to make like a shooter but not a sandwich?
Yeah, Tony Stark can make, you know, Jarvis, but yet he cannot do anything else.
Speaking of Jarvis, I mean, when it comes to his progression to things, like Jarvis has a big progression, slightly, but with Iron Man, I think Robert Downey Jr., I was watching this really cool video about him talking about the suits and the progression that have come through those, and how originally when he made that first suit, it was self-preservation. It was nothing to do with helping anybody else but getting him out of that damn cave and back home where he could eat a cheeseburger, right? That's all he wanted to do. And once he got out of there, the altruism came in where he wanted to start helping others, looking at his company and the problems that they were still working on, they didn't know about later on, but the suits kind of informed the character as it progressed, like from Iron Man 3 with the suit just not even working for him at the point, and him having to be Tony Stark and not Iron Man to overcome. As well as just with his relationship with Peter Parker, Iron Spider over there, and realizing that he wants more out of life than just trying to protect like everyone around him. He wants a life himself. So there's a lot of progression when it comes there in Endgame, of course.
Okay, let's get to your question.
So, knowing that Robert Downey Jr. is Iron Man, and that literally him and like the same person, do you think in the first movie, because one of the things I loved about the first movie was the fact that he was going to be a bodyguard, the Iron Man voice was just amazing. And then at the end of the movie he goes, oh, I'm Iron Man. Do you guys think they should have stuck with that, or do you think they made that decision based on it being Robert Downey Jr.?
Let me see, there's someone with a hat that might want to answer this question. I'm not sure who it is.
Rich, will you go
Oh,
ahead?
it's Rich?
Yes. What I really like about it is that was the first time, the first time Marvel went, this alternate ego and all.
They don't need it, yeah.
Because that's always been the downfall of DC movies. No one knows who Superman is. An entire building full of journalists, and they can't figure it out. And they're all keeping their identity secret and all this. And Marvel just went, this is dumb. It's not going to work long term. Let's just not do it. He admits he's Iron Man right off the bat. Everyone knows who Steve Rogers is because he's a hero, and on down the line, they're just like, look, they are who they are, and people know, done. And it's not a storyline, it's not an issue. I thought it was a great idea.
I liked it. It was, again, it's one of the reasons why I love Iron Man so much is because the character of Tony Stark, he can handle that. Like, he's in the spotlight all the time. People come up to him for other reasons, so this is just another reason for him you know, for people to know him. So that part doesn't bother him. His brain is somewhere else. It's in whatever he's thinking about at the time, and it's usually not about other people, even though we think that. It's about what he's creating, and so the fact that everybody knows it just takes that part off the table, so we don't even have to worry about it anymore. So he shows up to like a burger opening or a restaurant opening in one of his, you know, suits of armor, and then he leaves. Like that's just now how he transports himself around, which I think is fantastic. So I think it's just another charm of the character, and we're all like, okay, this is something new, this is something different, I like it. It's just, everything's out on the table, and so we got to see everything. And so I think it was brilliant.
Would you do that? Would you ever take public transportation again?
No. No.
Yeah, I'll be there in a minute.
I think it's great that that line was actually a Robert Downey Jr. ad lib. There is a version where he just reads the cards like he's supposed to, and that that's how it all started, from that ad lib. And then it was the editor in Endgame that was like, you know what you need is after the snap is he needs to say I am Iron. They didn't shoot that. That was the last thing they shot. It was a reshoot. And that ties it all together, you know. And I think that's so poetic that the whole universe, like the whole MCU, was just fortuitous events like that to happen. Now, hey, let's get Samuel L. Jackson in here and shoot him as Nick Fury. It'd be kind of funny, wouldn't it? You know, and then that becomes a through line for all the rest of it. I mean, those are just, you know.
Do you guys know why they chose to make that the end credit scene and not actually put Samuel L. Jackson in the film? They didn't want to hype up a unrealistic expectation that they'd be building a universe. So they wanted to put it in there just in case this doesn't work out, we'll put it as an after credit scene. That way nobody will put all their hopes into it. Justice League!
We're not gonna call
We don't
names
even
in
have
that today.
The funny thing about Iron Man and how much they really didn't know where this movie was gonna go. So I was working at Disney at the time, and in my office they would always send all the promotional products because that was my job, was to get stuff to the masses, right? So I have boxes and boxes and boxes of these Iron Man 3D glasses. And we get this email that says, okay, we have pre-screenings for the next 3 weeks around the world. If this doesn't go well, what are we gonna do with all these glasses? And I was just thinking, party, like, they were really cool. Obviously the film went well, and then people are trying to buy the glasses off me, but I didn't do that, you know, so we had it. But they really had no idea. So I just boxes of marketing stuff, thousands of glasses and posters and everything, and they had no idea whether we were gonna hand it out or whether we were gonna have to burn it. Like, that's pretty much what it was. Crazy now, because we all want that stuff. I'm like, where is it? Where did that stuff go?
You tell us.
I was just
Where
about to
did that
ask
stuff go?
It's in my storage.
I'm like, you have answers. No, so Christian touched on this a little bit, but do you think that Endgame, and we're just going to talk about it briefly, did Tony Stark's character justice? Do you think that that was a good ending for Tony Stark?
Better than we could have imagined. I think everybody expected something out of it, and everyone's well what we thought was going to happen. But we thought that would be the case, and we were all surprised, and yeah, honestly, they couldn't have ended his story any better, I don't think.
I was totally happy with it. I walked out of Endgame and I thought this, you know, there were a few problems, but as a film critic, but more as just a lover of Iron Man and the Marvel Cinematic Universe, I was really happy. I was really happy with what I saw and with what he said. And his relationship with Peter Parker and Spider-Man is one of my favorite relationships in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So I was happy with it. What? Jay?
So we are not taking any questions from Jay. I just decided.
Can I ask one question?
Yes.
Like, when you talk about his character arc and everything, do you feel like his snap is finally the culmination of the conversation him and Steve had in Avengers about you not being the man to step on the wire and let it happen?
Ooh.
Yeah.
Yes.
His cockiness and his arrogance and all that, he's caused a lot of problems.
He's the lot of problems.
And he finally gets to fix it, but it's gonna cost him. And he's gonna have to do exactly what Steve Rogers said, and I thought that was great. The other thing I thought was wonderful about it, gets me every time, I've seen it 7 times. I want to get to 8, so I've, wait.
24 hours.
Yeah, so I spent a day watching it, but is Pepper Potts' response to him.
You can rest.
She gets
You
me
can
every
rest,
time.
yeah, I love it,
and
every
says
time.
that now you can rest. And, well, what she says is, we'll be okay.
Yeah.
And like, that's exactly what you would tell a father who's going, don't worry about us, we'll be fine. You saved us. And it's great. It's a great ending.
Well, I feel like he knew what was going to happen, and this is just my own theory and what goes on in my brain, but when Doctor Strange says there's one outcome, and then he kind of gives him this look, in my mind, I feel like
Tony knew.
I feel like they had a
everyone's
moment
mind.
and he knew that it was going to be something that it was going to be something to do with him.
Well, I think that last time that Strange looks at him, that's when it clicks for Tony.
Yeah.
Like, it has to be me. I think that in that moment, he's like, all right, Doctor Strange is sitting here being weird again. And, you know, he's out here being weird. He's out here being weird again, and now I finally get it. Now I finally get that, like, I am the one who has to make the ultimate sacrifice for the rest of humanity.
Yeah, he should have gone.
And his catharsis with his dad also was a huge part.
Oh, yeah, huge.
Iron Man 1, they didn't delve into too much. Iron Man 2, that was the bigger part. But like for them to really give you that, who expected to go back
In time, yeah.
I love that
have
moment.
That great moment where he's sitting there with his dad talking about raising his kid.
Yeah.
I think that's the first time he actually appreciated his father. Like, I think I think this was the only time that Tony could have really understood his dad is by having a child first, and then finally being able to understand his father's sacrifices, and finally be able to go back and just say thanks, you know, and give him a little bit of advice, but knowing that like this is going to be the end for him, like, you know, at least I can have some resolution with my father in the past. So I thought that was like icing on the cake. I will say though, I never could have imagined sitting in that early screening of Iron Man 1 that this is where we were going to end. Like, never in my wildest dreams, because again, I didn't necessarily think that other people were gonna like it. I was like, I love this movie, but you know, who knew? But the way Kevin Feige's mind works was so extraordinary, and look what he pulled off, you know? So, okay, question?
Okay. So speaking of like Iron Man setting kind of the tone for the whole cinematic universe, I was really surprised. I was in high school at the time that it was sexy and it was hardcore and there were like issues, like actual psychological things going on to figure out, but it was still really accessible for kids. And I feel like most movies that try to do that end up really bland and watered down. Like, how did they make that decision, and was that a risk, and why did they choose to go that way to make it awesome for adults and kids?
It was a huge risk. And what a lot of people don't like about the Marvel movies, probably none of you, because you're all here, is that Disney and Marvel, they have a formula and a plan, and a lot of people put down the formula. But the formula works. And like I said earlier, is that it's such a relatable film, and what Disney and Marvel know how to do together best is they know how to get a family in the theater. If you can't tell, I drink the Marvel Disney Kool-Aid all day long. And they know how to entertain you as a whole, as everyone in the family. And so it was a risk because they could have gone dark like Batman and made something, you know, that route, but they didn't, and it worked, and it was a big risk.
I think they also had, that same year, nobody talks about it, they had done The Incredible Hulk that year, which didn't follow the formula and didn't have the success that Iron Man had.
Hey, unpopular opinion, I really like that Incredible Hulk. Like, I do. I really liked Edward Norton. I know things went awry, but I really like that.
I don't hate it, I'm just saying it wasn't Iron Man. You know?
Right, and that's true, yeah.
So Edith, the glasses, in Spider-Man, and the
spoiler alert.
Has everybody seen Far From Home with Tom? If you haven't seen it yet, what are your life choices?
You know, definitely close your ears right now.
So we're talking about Edith and the glasses that Spider-Man gets.
and the funeral video that he made when he died. But when did he make those? Because Edith stands for Even That I'm a Hero. So how he would have had to know he's dying or died.
When did he make the message at the end of Endgame?
Shut up!
So,
Hey!
I think Colin has the answer. Hold on.
Tony Stark is a futurist, so that means he's always planning for any possible outcome of the future, and that's why he left the message for his daughter, and that's why he also thought to do Edith, because he's a futurist.
Well, and they kind of do that in Iron Man 3 when he's laying there in a pile of rubble in the middle of nowhere, and even on the ship, when he's talking to his helmet, because he always thinks that he's not going to come home. That's like his biggest fear, is that either everyone else is going to die or he's going to die. And so I feel like he kind of knew, but he was always prepared. He definitely thought about the future.
Well, I think that was part of it too, with his suit, and in that final snap scene, like, he didn't just have that built into his suit where he can quickly get those stones off of the other gauntlet without knowing that he could be in that predicament. It goes back to him always being future thinking and thinking of the possibilities that could happen. He's always, a couple steps ahead of everyone else.
Yeah, I was gonna say, when he made when he made the Iron Gauntlet, I think he went, I think I'll make another one.
Right.
Yeah.
Just in case, and it turned out, it needed it.
Which suit in the first one was your guys' favorite? I like the complete chrome silver suit that he has. What is it, Mark II would be the second one that he made in the first Iron Man. That, I think, was my favorite of the group.
I love the final suit that he wears, in the fight and everything. I have a poster of it. It just looks great. And when I heard that they were coming out with the movie, I was hoping that they would do it right. And it looks really good. I mean, you can even look at it now. It's 10, 11 years old. And it looks really good. So
That's my favorite. Yeah.
So when I was in high school, I was like one of 5 kids who who like Iron Man and Fantastic Four and all like the B-list, C-list superheroes are. And now in high school, I think they teach intro to Marvel characters. Was there any foresight or any surprise in how much this is permeated our entire society? Nerd culture is pop culture.
Geek shall inherit the earth.
Yeah,
We always knew this was coming.
Finally, I'm not the only one in the room wearing Iron Man underwear. I think it's great. I know some of you are.
I remember sitting watching the Avengers, seeing Loki with the full horn helmet flying around on a little thing, and I'm like, other people like this too? They're like, yeah, everyone's just cheering too. Okay, all right, I guess it's okay.
Yeah, you're like, finally, everyone joined
I
us.
was in Taiwan a couple of years ago, right at the time Ant-Man came out, and there are kids running around in Taiwan with Captain America shirts, and nobody likes America, but they love Captain America, And I thought, that's crazy how the saturation of people love that character, they don't like the country, but they love him, so.
Yeah, and it's really shaped pop culture in itself, and it's made it more acceptable within geek communities, and where you feel like you can come to places like FanX and be public about it, and really not have to hide from the high school cliques that used to kind of bash on you a little because of those things.
My question is for Valerie. Am I the guy you were talking about when you were talking about sitting on the lap? Because I'm good with that.
Oh wow, that's not awkward at all.
Any other questions?
I don't know how to answer that question. What's your real question, sir?
Real question. Well, first of all, I'm about the oldest guy in the room. I'm turning 60 in December.
Congratulations.
I remember the really low-grade Filmation Marvel comics or cartoons of the 60s. And my perspective on Iron Man was always a little different, because to me, he was A-list. All those guys were. And so I was very excited about it, except for the fact that Downey Jr. was playing him, because I knew his history and I hated all his films.
And then were you pleasantly surprised?
I was blown away. I was shocked. It was utterly amazing. And then I got on YouTube and saw his screen test, and I thought, of course. So I'm just wondering, I'm wondering, and it may be tough for you guys, but how is the older generation reacting to the new Marvel Cinematic Universe?
I think you just answered that question.
Yeah.
I
had
mean,
to be on 63 Sunday.
Oh, well, happy early birthday. Happy early birthday.
Amazing.
Yes.
This is my second FanX, and it's
the cool thing about being a nerd is that it's kind of like really good music, is that if you like really good music, it doesn't matter when the music was made. If you like your superheroes, it doesn't matter. Like I just turned 40, but I watched those same cartoons. I watched all of the old Batman shows that were on before, I should have been watching them. So I think that we were all surprised with Robert Downey Jr. I think it doesn't, matter with the age because he surprised us all. And that's one more thing about this movie that is fantastic is because, again, Robert Downey Jr. and his character, they redeemed themselves. And it means that everyone can come back from something and you can make your life better and someone else's life better. And I know that's really cheesy and kumbaya-ish, but that's why I love this character and that's why I love Tony Stark and Robert Downey Jr. because they both kind of came back from this thing that we were like, I don't know if we should like this guy. And then we're like, we really like this guy. So I don't know that it's a generational thing. I think if you like it, you like it.
And she doesn't really like to talk about it too much in interviews. People try to press him on it. But there are a lot of similarities between, in the comics, Tony Stark's an outright alcoholic who struggles with it all the time. And there's some great storylines that they didn't quite get to because when Disney bought him, they're like, oh no, we can't make him alcoholic. Robert Downey has struggled with all kinds of stuff, and I think that maybe that's how he could play that kind of character. I think it was a real stroke of genius. Marvel's really good at picking their people, because I'll look at him and go, wow, I didn't think of that. Whoever is a great choice.
And I think that just goes to show how he's recovered too, and being able to put himself in that role where he may have some kind of triggers relating to previous experiences, and just owning it.
That's what I was going to say, and before we get to your question, I was actually going to say, so what comic book storylines would you have wanted to see adapted for Iron Man that, did not make the MCU?
Yes.
Popular opinion, yes.
Also, Doom Quest.
Ooh.
That would have been great. I would have loved to have seen that.
Yeah.
It looked amazing.
Hello.
I was on the Avengers Endgame panel earlier. We were talking all about Tony because I love my son Tony Stark. I'm telling you. But my question is, what do you guys think as far as the future? Because of course he's gone now. And in the comics we got Ironheart, Riri Williams, and we know in those comics that Tony kind of became her Jarvis and walked her through. So what do you think MCU wise, and what would you like to see?
Disney Plus. There are emergencies in old, in prequel type movies and series that will be around.
I think the What If series has a lot of opportunities to cover some stuff too, especially when it comes to after Endgame. I don't know if they're going to do any What If after anything.
I don't know yet, but I feel like the What If has
they're going to cover every movie, right? Each episode is covering one film from the universe.
Well, and I think what's great about Tony Stark, and if you've seen Far From Home, and again, if you haven't, why are your life choices leading you in this direction? A great part in Far From Home is that he gets on a plane that obviously was made for him, Spider-Man. And so Iron Man, aka Tony Stark, thought in advance about this, and he has left his footprints all over the place. So there are so many ways that he can come back in the movies because he left footprints places. He left his DNA, places that he can see. But I really love how you got to see how Peter Parker got kind of passed the torch in Far From Home. And had this very Tony Stark moment in that movie. But I do think that Tony Stark, and the way he did think in advance, and the way he was so smart, and the way that he is inset in all of his technologies, is there are so many opportunities to him to be a thought, or for him to come up in different ways in the movies.
Yeah, you said he left his DNA. Are we going to clone Tony?
Right. I was going to mention that, and I also was going to say I wish that we had more opportunities to see kind of, what Peter could do in Tony's absence, and we all know that's not going to happen anymore. So, speculation, we don't know. But I think this is still other opportunities.
Is that, remember when Clausen died, and all of the Avengers stepped forward, is I think that Peter Parker, this is just my opinion, is that now that Tony is gone, he's not going to be Tony Stark. He's going to be better than Tony Stark because of Tony Stark, and he wouldn't have if Tony wouldn't have died. So he left him everything that he needed to be better than Tony, and so that's why I'm excited to see.
Yeah, I mean, I really can't wait to see what Sony does with it now for Peter and like how they advance him in the next 2 to 3 films or what that looks like for him. But I'm also hoping that like now that, now that we don't unfortunately have Peter on the Marvel side, that we can see Tony's influence in other characters moving forward. Like that we can get that kind of imprint from Tony and other characters in the MCU. I think that's a perfect time. And also, I mean, like, we still have some incredible young geniuses, Shuri, who could do a lot. So yes, I'm hoping that we can have her, kind of thrust into the forefront too, although we have no idea, like, what Black Panther 2 is going to be about yet. But still, having those kind of influences and touches there. Go ahead.
So do you guys think there's any hope for Sony and Disney making a deal with Spider-Man?
I think there is. I think they're going to be so mad at each other, they're going to pass up millions and billions of dollars.
They were negotiating again yesterday.
Yes.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. I was like, guys, don't leave this money on the table.
Yeah, Sony Marvel wants more than 5%. So what do? You ask for 50%. And then what does Sony do? Okay, no. Okay, how about 20%? Okay, good. Let's make the movies.
Let's put it in the ground of
Also, if we keep talking about these movies, people are going to get even more passionate, hype, and then they're all going to go regardless. So I think they have brains. They know what they're doing over there at these companies. So.
They're making the leaks public for a reason so that Marvel can get upset and want the agreements to work.
I mean,
it's
the marketing
is shifting where it's getting a little bit complicated and stuff. I think they love Spider-Man. We love Spider-Man, and they love money, and maybe we can make that up.
Yeah, we're definitely at the very beginning, I feel like, of negotiations between them. I feel like the leak was very, very premature at that.
If Sony does it, then North Korea better hack them again. That's all I'm saying.
That escalated quickly.
very, very quickly. Yeah.
Hi. So with everything going down with Spider-Man and everything, and you kind of touched on it, what do you think, like in the next coming movies, do you think they're going to be touching more on how Tony's absence is affecting everybody else that's left? Because he was a huge integral call.
Or not to. He's impacted literally every single person. And in one of the deleted scenes even, I mean, you see each of these characters kind of getting on their knees and really honoring him for what he's done for this universe.
Not just that, like how many other satellites full of drones do you think this guy has? Like there's so many stuff that this guy has in the MCU that we don't know about. They're like, yeah, well, Tony built that just in case something were to go wrong, and everything's going wrong, and they have to fix the problem. I can see that happening a lot, actually. Some of these things.
Yeah, for sure. I definitely think so. So I have another question. If you could choose any other film in the MCU to kick this off besides the first Iron Man, what would you go with?
The first Captain America.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah. Maybe it'll be the first Hulk.
Listen, the judgment that I feel currently.
Martin Scorsese and start with Endgame, and then
Let's confuse the crap out of you and hope you
and then end on a high note.
This probably isn't like a popular thing, but I would either say Ant-Man just because it would be another risk, and I like risks. I really want to see Disney and Marvel more risks. I feel like with Disney Plus, there's a lot of things they already know we're gonna watch, but give me something that you're not sure I'm gonna watch. And so I think with Ant-Man, we were all like, what is this? We like Paul Rudd, but what? And then they're like, okay. This is pretty cool. But I also think that Doctor Strange was a cool, different enough movie that if they would have started with that and it wouldn't have gone anywhere, again, they could have kind of swept it under the rug like Hulk, but I think, sorry.
No one's gonna
I
pick
love
the
the
one.
Incredible Hulk. I want a new, better one, but they're never going to make another one.
Yeah, I was thinking Guardians would be the one that I would kick it off.
And we didn't know anything about Earth until they got to Earth.
I mean, I was very on the edge about Guardians of the Galaxy. When the first trailer came out, I was like, I mean, it looks okay. And then as soon as Chris Pratt's on the screen, on that big screen, it's just phenomenal from there.
Yeah, Guardians I think would be my pick. I mean, I want to say Black Panther because it was so phenomenal, but I just don't think, I think where we were in the storyline, like that would not make sense, but I feel like Guardians would be my pick. I mean, I'm just super surprised that no one picked Thor. Like,
Why didn't you want to start with the Incredible Hulk?
well, first off, I did love it, so I mean, you guys can judge me for the rest of the con for that, but I did love the Incredible Hulk. But I still feel like Guardians, I think would, if we started with space travel, I felt like that would be like a good jumping off point for the MCU. Okay, so we have.
Interesting thought, but like, what's great, going back to Iron Man 1, what's great about that is like, it's a guy in a suit that he made, and you can believe that.
Right,
and
that's true.
And Steve Rogers has that. There's a guy that gave him a shot, and now he's cool. And you start off with something that's too far out there, and you would have to, but there's an organic growth that came from Iron Man 1 that led it, so we could go, oh yeah, Rocket, and Groot talking to me. I get it, okay.
I love that, yeah, I love the way you think. You're like, let's ease them into it. Like, let's leave them.
It's a gateway drug.
I know. Okay, so we have 3 minutes left. This is our last question. Go ahead.
Hello.
Hello.
So we've been talking a lot about how Tony Stark's impact on the MCU has really made it grow over the years, and Devin, just now, you've named a lot of really brilliant Marvel films that could have definitely started this off on their own, but going back to Endgame, now that Tony is gone, and us in the real world, we're living in a time where MCU is the definition of pop culture. This is my generation, Star Wars. Do you think that this growth in pop culture influence is going to continue because those brilliant films like Guardians and Ant-Man, can they carry the MCU in pop culture? Or now that Tony's gone, do you think that people are going to get less hype and it's going to go back to like geekdom and just nerds are going to be interested in Marvel? It's not going to be like every person.
I think it depends. I know it's an easy answer, but there's a lot of people where I work who when I start talking about the next superhero movie, they're like, oh, I'm so sick of superhero movies. This one's going to be the last one that it does $1 billion. I'm like, I don't think so. I think people are going to continue to like them as long as they're good. If they come out with another
Incredible Hulk.
people are going to notice.
Iron Man was good because they changed the game.
Yeah, I think it's a tricky situation because the reason why we loved it in the beginning is because, again, I'm going to say again, it was such a risk. And me as a fan, I'm going to go watch all of them. I love them, I'm going to watch all of them. But in the beginning, when they came out with this idea, it was just 3% of the culture, that's nerds, that they thought we're going to go watch this. And it could easily go back to that if they oversaturate the market and they don't start challenging us like they did with the, they just keep throwing stuff at us that we already know and we already love. We're going to be like, okay. But they really need to come up with something that I'm not sure about, but I'm like, I want to believe in it. So I really want to take a risk with something. I want them to take a risk.
I think that Kevin has this diabolical plan that will unfold over the next 10 to 15 years. And I think that he's going to somehow keep all of us still very much engaged and interested. I mean, I think Disney Plus is just kind of one small piece of the puzzle that is obviously already kicking butts. I mean, the What If Alone series, I was like, yes. When they announced Doctor Strange, the horror film, yes. Like everything so far, Blade, absolutely. I was like, why isn't Blade coming out tomorrow? Yes. So I feel like, you know, he's definitely kind of crafting some new plan for like the next 20 years of the MCU.
Don't be surprised if there's a wane. I mean, of like popularity. Remember after Avengers, the first movie, there was like those standalone Iron Man 3 and Thor 2, and everyone was like, that's cool, but not as cool as that. So we just have the most epic film ever, 2 in a row, and there's going to be a little bit of a, okay, as they set up what you're talking about, Kevin's master plan, and it's going to take a little while to get those new characters, and we care about those new characters, so we cared about the ones that we no longer have with us. Okay, so that is it for this panel. Tell us real quick, guys, where everyone can find you, the other panels you're going to be at. Let us know. Start with you, Con.
Yeah, you can find me on SoulAndDroids.com, anything at SoulAndDroids, and then I have a panel tomorrow with Val, Movies That Make Us, where we'll be talking about the different movie time, or back to...
We're going to be talking about...
I thought you were going to finish it for me.
No.
Okay.
I like to watch you struggle.
Oh my God, the struggle. Time travel.
Time travel.
So it'll be fantastic. It's 11 a.m. tomorrow.
Patrick.
Yeah, you can find me at PatrickBabyReviews.com. If you go on the FanX app, you can actually find all of us and you can rate how we did and stuff. And yeah, the schedule will be on there. I've got a one at noon tomorrow. We're going to talk about toys that I played with as a kid and do they still hold up? And Saturday, I've got one at 10 o'clock where we'll be covering Galaxy Quest 20 years of awesomeness of graphics.
Sorry, Rich, go quick.
Rich, I'm at Fox 13 all the time, I live there.
Okay, next Val, quick.
I'm on B98.7 weekday mornings from 5 to 9. And then tonight, we'll be on the podcast with those people over there in room 250. Come and watch the live podcast.
18 and over.
18 and older.
18 and over, 8 o'clock.
Yeah, we might have heard some of this
my
before.
comics, one more size of comics. And then whenever we talk about more MCU stuff, tomorrow at 11 a.m. I'll do another Endgame.
With the woman too.
Another Endgame panel.
Yeah, I'm on that same Endgame panel, so yes, find me and Lady KB. And then also, I'm doing Chilling Adventures of Sabrina at 6 p.m. Love that show.